gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's January the 8th, 2024. I'm Gary Furman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined once again this morning by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, and Stephen Wagner, back from the All-American Bowl in San Antonio, as we discuss the news of the day. And guys, I thought we'd focus on a couple topics today. Definitely want to talk to Stephen quite a bit about what he saw at the All-American Bowl. But I first want to talk about quarterbacks, because I think everybody is like worn out from weeks of, hitting their F5 buttons and sitting at the edge of their seats about what transfer quarterback Miami might get. And so far, they have not signed a transfer portal quarterback. And that recruitment continues. And we've written analysis on several of them, Matt Shodell. But, is it a panic moment right now for Miami that they have not secured and landed a quarterback yet in the transfer portal?
I mean, it's not ideal. I was looking back at the list of available quarterbacks, and it's a long list that really just Miami never got in play with. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but there's double digit guys that went in the portal that Miami, certainly from what I heard, looked at, and just for whatever reason they weren't interested, didn't work out, or Miami waited too long for Cam Ward, whatever. So now you're down to just really less than a handful of guys, and the enrollment drop dead date is January 24th. You have 2 returning scholarship quarterbacks, an incoming true freshman quarterback. One of the scholarship quarterbacks is coming off an injury, might be limited early in spring. And you need to be able to run your offense for 15 practices. So unless Miami wants to hold their spring practices in July, after they get a second portal window quarterback, you need to get somebody. So in that sense, yeah, it's a panic moment. You have, whatever it is, 2 weeks to get a guy who is at the most important position, where really you don't have any, to me, proven elite championship level talent at the most important position. I mean, you could see from the college football playoffs how important it is to have an elite quarterback. And Miami doesn't have that on the roster right now, in my opinion. Can Jakari become that? Yeah. Can Emery become that? Yeah. Can Judd Anderson become that? Yeah, but they're not. Right now, they're not. People always yell at us, how can you say they're not elite? They haven't played at an elite level.
Played 2 games.
People want to say Jakari played at an elite level against Rutgers. I can't even have that conversation, so I'm sorry. But if I'm ranking the quarterbacks that are left, the first one is, they call him Baby Tua, but, he can't transfer from Maryland right now. He's waiting for the NCAA to grant him a waiver because he played in 5 games at Alabama. And, they have all these different, I guess, rationales for why he should be able to have that not be a rule that counts against him. You have to play in 4. One of them, he just took a knee a couple of times, honoring his brother who was injured. But you still played in 5 games. So if the NCAA allows that, they're opening a can of worms where various other players at all positions throughout the country can argue, well, look, I played in 5 games, but one of them I got hurt in the 3rd play, or one of them I only had 1 tackle, or who knows what they're going to come up with. My parents were there, so they wanted to see me play. Who knows? Where's the line for that? And yeah, I get it. He should be able to get the extra year. And I also get it that I think their best case isn't the argument that, hey, it shouldn't matter because X, Y, and Z. No, you played 5 games. That's a number's a number, a rule's a rule. But the NCAA has reacted very non-aggressively to the threat of legislation that will change their own rules. So if the NCAA can find a way to make this a one-time exemption, a one-time exception, and call it something, I don't know what, then I think they'll try to do that, because otherwise this could wind up in a lawsuit. But again, if Miami's just waiting for, if he gets denied and then he appeals it and they file a lawsuit, we're talking about who knows when he'd actually be able to report, So are you going to wait on that forever, just like you did with Cam Ward? I get it that Mario, and I said at the time, Mario's stubborn to a fault, and I would have done the same thing he did. Cam Ward is a difference maker. You need Cam Ward. You wait as long as it takes if you think you have a chance. But now you're in a situation where what's left? You're going to wait.
You missed out on, really.
You're going to wait forever
for Cam Ward. If Will Howard wanted to come to Miami, Will Howard still could have come to Miami. He wanted to go to Ohio State.
Well, remember, if Will Howard had never visited Ohio State, if Miami had, off that visit, if Miami had said, you're our guy, I think Will Howard's here today. And I'm not saying Will Howard would be the answer anyway. I just think he's maybe a better version of Tyler Van Dyke. He had some interception problems. He had some other problems. He's not this home run hitter that Cam Ward is, which is why Miami waited for Cam Ward. But I'll make it short.
And they thought they had a deal with him as well. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I understand, but they were misled. But long story short, is Miami now is in a bind. They need to get somebody now who's not overly expensive so they can spend the NIL money if Baby 2 is available or when the second portal window opens. To me, I can't imagine a scenario where Tully is available for spring practice. It's too small a window for him to hear and get all this stuff sorted out. So you're looking at him in the second portal window. You're looking at other guys who will probably be in the second portal window that are better than what's available now. And you need to have that $1.5 million available for that guy. Like, that's a fact. So now you can't spend $1 million or $800,000 or whatever on some other guy. Like, it's not unlimited amount of money here. You need other positions to still be filled in the portal in the second window, especially when in spring practice where you're deficient. So to me, it makes sense to take a guy, like the James Madison, Jordan McLeod guy. It makes sense to probably take the Albany transfer Reese Poffenbarger. I don't think it makes as much sense to take Jaden Maeva. I can't say his name. I'm not going to do it, Gary. The guy from UNLV, I'll call him. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he's really in the picture anymore.
No, I don't think so either. So I think it's down to those other two guys from minor programs. That's what makes sense to me because you take a chance when you take a guy from a lesser conference. It was not even a lesser conference, a lesser level, I should say, because you don't know how they're going to respond. And both those guys I just mentioned, from James Madison, and from and my brain's dying here.
Albany.
And from Albany, Reese is from Albany. When you look at the games both those guys played against the better competition, and we're not talking about Ohio State and Georgia here. Okay, we're talking about off the top of my head, they played Virginia, Hawaii, schools like that, and they actually struggled in those games, against the higher level of competition. But of course, their teammates were also at a lower level of competition, which makes a difference. But it's a question mark. You don't know. It's not someone who's already done it at a high level against high level competition and proven they can do it. So they're cheaper. And Miami right now needs a cheaper option, somebody who can come in and compete and maybe be a big surprise. Dual threat makes a lot of sense to me. Both those guys are dual threat because that's the way college football is. And that is what that's what Shannon Dawson had at Houston with Toon when he was so good. So I don't want to be too long-winded, but I get it. I think it makes sense. Get one of those two guys, move forward, see what comes up in the second portal. And, it's not panic time because there's a second portal, but it's also not a great situation for Miami.
Well, some people are a little rattled about this whole eggs in one basket thing, with Cam Ward, which lingered for a few weeks. And, they were misled by Cam Ward. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He had agreed, his representatives had agreed to a deal with the collective. So why wouldn't Miami think he was coming?
They agreed to a deal if he was going to college. That's the problem.
I understand, but they had reason to believe he was going to come, and then he never pulled the trigger. So that
fair, Gary. He always said the NFL was an option. Like, everyone knew that. It's why he didn't commit. It's why he didn't publicly ever say anything. It didn't catch anyone by surprise at because they knew that's what he was waiting for. So it's a little disingenuous to say, oh, but they had a deal. They had a deal if he stayed in college.
Right. So if your point is that they were a little overly optimistic, that's possibly a fair argument. But people are a little bit on edge these days, and so now they see Miami, and I don't think there's any question Miami is waiting for Baby Tua to see if he gets his waiver. I think that Tua's people love the idea of bringing his brother into the Miami market, where older brother is shining for the Miami Dolphins and made the Pro Bowl this year and having a phenomenal season, and his career seems to be on an upward trend. I think they love the idea of of bringing Baby Tua here into Miami with him, and I think that if he gets his waiver, Miami immediately becomes the favorite to land him. But that's creating a waiting game now, and people are a little anxious about this. What if Miami does not get their elite quarterback? And I'll circle back to what I was saying in the middle of the year. And maybe there is a lesson in here, and some guys are going to get mad at me for saying this, but maybe there's a lesson in here to the fan base to be, I use this term a lot, be careful what you wish for. And I was saying this all year when everyone was just absolutely annihilating Tyler Van Dyke and ignoring the fact that he was having a second straight injury-riddled season, that his coordinators have been changing every single year, that everything around Tyler Van Dyke was in total disarray. And I always felt that was contributing to his level of playing, level on his playing level on the field. I felt was significantly affected by all those things. And at the core of it, Tyler Van Dyke has some pretty decent quarterbacking skills, and they don't grow on trees. These quarterbacks, you don't just snap your fingers and have an elite quarterback on your team. I mean, it's not as simple as that. And you watch, if Tyler Van Dyke stays healthy this year under Phil Longo at University of Wisconsin, like, you're going to see freaking parades out in front of Matt Shodell's house because one of his kids goes to Wisconsin, and they're going to be going ape up there if Tyler Van Dyke plays to his level, because it's going to mean good things for their football program. So I think there's a lesson here. When you have a good player who's gone through adversity, maybe the mood doesn't have to become so toxic. Okay. I think it became very toxic with Tyler. I think it left Miami with no choice in terms of bringing Tyler back. They couldn't bring him back in the toxic environment that was created here as he struggled through a second straight season this year. And if they don't get somebody better than him here, like, you could argue Baby Tua is better than Tyler. Cam Ward, certainly you would have been able to argue, was better than Tyler. But if they don't get somebody better here than Tyler Van Dyke, then this whole running Tyler Van Dyke out of South Florida will be a colossal fail. And I think there's a lesson there, personally.
Well, the only lesson here is to bring Azubi Charles back as the host of the show, because there was no way Tyler Van Dyke was coming back because
he couldn't come back. It was too toxic.
Well, what are you saying?
I'm saying that it was a mistake to make it as toxic as it was. That's what I'm saying.
Who made it toxic? Tyler made it. Tyler.
Here.
Let's be fair.
You've been watching this the whole year. You've been watching the whole thing, the whole takedown of Tyler Van Dyke.
Tyler made it toxic with his play and his demeanor on the field. Like, I don't know what you think fans just responded that way because Tyler played so well?
No, his body language was horrendous. His head was horrendous. Everything broke down around Tyler Van Dyke, and it impacted him, and he was terrible. But my point is, they don't have anybody better than him right now, Matt. There is nobody better than Tyler Van Dyke on this roster right now, going into year 3 for Mario, when everybody expects him to win.
Well, in terms of wins and losses, I disagree. Having watched, not that Chikari was great in Rutgers, but if Chikari had started the whole year, which he never would have, obviously he needed to redshirt, I still think they wind up with I still think they get 7 wins. I'm sorry. I don't think that Tyler did anything so spectacular on his own that won 7 games for Miami. That's just how I see it.
Okay. Steven, talk to us.
Finally, Jesus, I never thought you were going to say anything.
Al, thanks for joining us this morning. Good morning, CaneSport, everybody. It's been a nice time. Be sure to go out and buy bird dogs, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, thank God. I don't have to work today. That's great news.
Serious, end the show. Just end the show, Gary. Put us out of our misery, please. He tried to marry me while you were gone. Did you watch that episode?
This is the first I've heard of any of this.
Yeah, right.
All right. Yeah, Miami's definitely. I have so many questions about. By the way, Gary, I have been dying for you to ask me my thoughts on Miami's quarterback situation for so freaking long, because I have been sitting here in silence for 14 minutes just thinking about the great thoughts that I'm having about everything that everyone needs to know. All right, so everyone sit down, shut up, and listen up, because I'm right, and this is what Miami needs to do. I will solve all of Miami's problems if you'll just shut up and listen to me. All right, well, first off, I 100% agree with what Matt said. Whenever you have someone like Cam Ward, who at least you feel like you have a really good chance of landing, you absolutely hold off. You absolutely hold off and you see if you can get him, because
But you
that
disagree
is
with what Matt said.
yeah, I am agreeing with what Matt said.
No,
Hallelujah.
Matt said the opposite. Matt said you don't wait.
What? You don't listen to me at all, Gary. What are you talking about? I said, of course. I said Mario was stubborn, but I agreed with him because I think you wait for a guy like Cam Ward. I literally said you could rewind the show and watch it later today.
I 100% agree, because that's the difference. A guy like Cam Ward is the difference between your program winning 10 games and your program winning 7 games, because we're to the point now where the rest of Miami's roster is actually in pretty good shape. The offensive line is looking like it should be pretty good next year. They're bringing in real receiver talent. They're recruiting really, really well. The defensive line looks like it should be much improved. Miami finally has the running backs that they want. It looks like the offensive weapons are really starting to take shape. I think a lot of these guys who were freshmen in 2021, I think they're going to, freshmen in 2023 are going to take real steps forward in 2024. You're about to see a lot more faces from that 2023 class start being major contributors, because they're not going to be true freshmen anymore. They're going to be sophomores who are actually ready to start getting legitimate playing time. So if you're able to get a quarterback, that's kind of the icing on the cake in terms of being able to get this team to 10 wins and be able to seriously compete for an ACC championship, because next year is going to be Miami's opportunity to strike. Clemson, I think they're on a downward trajectory. I do not think Cade Klubnik's the guy. I think that Dabo Swinney is remarkably arrogant in his own beliefs. I think he's overconfident in his philosophy that's quite frankly antiquated at this point. And I think not believing in NIL and not believing in the transfer portal, I think is going to get to him. I think that Clemson is going to continue on a downward trend. So Clemson, the team that's dominated the conference for the last decade, seems like they're on the way out. Florida State, they're losing a ton of talent after this season. So it looks like Florida State won't be quite the animal that they were last year. Not to mention Miami also gets Florida State at home next year. So the moment really is ripe to pounce. But if you're not going to get a guy like Cam Ward, well, then you're kind of left sitting around going, well, what the hell do we do now? Because Gary, you're definitely right. Tyler Van Dyke is better than any quarterback Miami has on the roster right now. But, I don't think Tyler Van Dyke would have left the program if Miami was definitely saying, all right, we're committing to him because we definitely feel like he is the best guy that we can have on this roster, whether it's bringing back players that we had last year or whether it's going out and getting someone from the portal. Fact is, he's not a Hurricane because Miami was thinking, well, we can find a way to upgrade. We can make ourselves better by not fighting like hell to say, Tyler, just stay in Miami. We'll commit to you. We'll make you the guy, because he's not leaving if he 100% believes I'll be the quarterback at Miami and I'm going to lead this team to the promised land. And I have full faith from this coaching staff. So Miami's backs are against the wall. And quite frankly, I'm starting to wonder, do you maybe just say, screw it, we'll go all in on Emory Williams at this point? And you'll stop looking around and saying, we're going to have to play this super conservative. We're going to have to be ultra conservative with our play calling. And we're going to have to stop asking Emory to not lose the game for us, as opposed to telling him to go win the game for you. Because you look at the games that he started this year, against Clemson, that was an ultra conservative game plan. He never really threw across the middle of the field. Everything was toward the sideline. They were very, very easy pre-snap or one-read throws for him. And then against Florida State, they were basically just saying, hey, man, don't throw bad picks and just give us a chance in this game. They were not really unleashing him. The only times that I really saw him have full faith from the coaching staff in terms of the plays that they were willing to call were against Miami of Ohio and then against Bethune-Cookman early in the season. But anytime that they were going up against a conference opponent, they were really, really careful with how they called their plays for Emory. But now you're in such a position where, quite frankly, if you're looking at guys at James Madison and Albany, you're probably looking at them more as depth guys, because who's not to say that these two guys or one of these two guys won't arrive on campus next year and Emory will just be better than them. Who's not to say that even if you do take a transfer quarterback, Emory is still going to be your best option. So, yeah, maybe this is the point where you start saying, well, maybe we don't spend money on a quarterback this year. Or if we do spend money, we spend money on taking a depth guy to give us a fourth quarterback on this roster. When really, in an ideal world, you probably like to have like five. Like, you've got three guys, and then maybe like two, or you've got three scholarship guys, and then maybe two practice players. So I'm starting to think, man, if you are going to take a quarterback, I'm almost thinking this is going to need to be a guy who can just add depth to the roster, because you're no longer getting the cream of the crop. Will Howard's at Ohio State. Cam Ward is off to the NFL. DJU is over at Florida State. Like, this is not a great year for transfer quarterbacks. And I think if you're Miami, it's time to start saying, well, we're not going to get any of the guys that we really, really wanted. I don't think we have a choice but to go all in on Emory and at least say, well, we can save money and we can use that money elsewhere. We can use that money to help fill out the roster. And that is what Miami needs to do. That is my mind-blowing plan for at least putting a Band-Aid on Miami this year.
Yeah, I could endorse that. But Matt, you did a deep dive into Baby Tua, and he is probably the only guy left out there right now that can save this situation. Let's be honest. We're not going to sugarcoat this. There's the Baby Tua probably, in my eyes, could save this situation if Miami, if he gets eligible and is able to come to Miami, because that gives you a starting quarterback for next year while you continue to develop Emory and Jakari and Judd, who would then continue to compete with each other and see if they can get good enough that you would give them the keys to the entire franchise. But you did a deep dive into Baby Tua's game. Does he make them better than Tyler Van Dyke?
Look, Tyler Van Dyke wasn't very good to me. I mean, he cost them a lot of games with some of the mistakes he made, or at least a couple of games. But, the thing with Talia is he did really, really well at a top program. This past season, 3,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 4 rushing scores. He's not a guy who really wows you like an NFL guy. Like, he's 5'11", but he does enough really well that he can be excellent in Miami's system, because, his grades, not that Pro Football Focus is that great or anything, but, he graded out like in the mid 70%, which is good, not great. But when he was kept clean in the pocket, he had a 90% grade, which is elite championship level play. When he was pressured in the pocket, this again, according to Pro Football Focus, but it's pretty easy to tell when you're pressured or not. The other grades are more subjective. 40% was his grade when he was pressured in the pocket. So this is a guy who, while he can make plays with his legs, he isn't a guy who really makes great decisions when he's hurried, when he's having to roll out and throw the ball, things like that. Doesn't do real well in those situations. But when he can stand in the pocket, have a passing lane, he is outstanding. And as you look at the Miami offensive line, you have to think, against the opposition they're playing next year, that he's a really good fit. So is he like the greatest quarterback talent-wise that's going to be, even top 5 or top 10 next year in the country? Probably not, to me. He's going to be a late round draft pick no matter what, because he's not the fastest, strongest, best arm, most accurate on all situations, things like that. But he's plus in all those categories. And the reason why, it would be very easy for him to go pro right now, right? Because the deck is stacked against him to be able to come back to college. He's not really being prepared for the NFL if he's denied an extra year, right? Because he'd be spending all his time focused on that instead of focused on the portal and other stuff. So, what that tells you is the truth, which is he's probably a free agent, right? So, or maybe a late round draft pick. So, and he's been outstanding at Maryland. Like he's, I think the career leader in passing yards there, right? And I think he led their conference in passing yards this year. So this is a guy who's done it at a really high level, yet he's not an NFL guy. He's a great college quarterback, not a great professional quarterback, and that's okay, because he can be a great college quarterback at Miami. I think he would be a guy at Miami who could throw for 25 to 35 touchdowns and keep his interceptions under 10. Throw that and run for 300 yards and another 4 or 5 scores. That's all Miami needs, because Lance Guidry's back. They don't need James Williams or Cam Kinchins or Leonard Taylor or Branson Dean because they have Lance Guidry. So, no, but to me, they really need a very good game manager at quarterback. And to me, that's Baby Tua can do it because he shouldn't be pressured that much. He should be in the 80% plus Pro Football Focus grades with the offensive line they'll have at Miami, with the running game taking pressure off him at Miami. I think he's a perfect fit here. So I really think that would be a great addition. With the caveat that Tyler Van Dyke graded out at I think 86% or something this year, 84%. He was in the 80s. So Tyler Van Dyke graded out higher than Talia, So maybe this is why people say don't trust Pro Football Focus. I trust Gary Furman more than Pro Football Focus for the record.
Gary Furman thinks it was a mistake to run Tyler Van Dyke out of South Florida the way he was run out without having a replacement in place for him. That's where I stand on the subject, and I was saying it all year long. I kept saying.
So you're the guy.
I'm not being a Monday morning quarterback here.
No, you're not. No, you're not. But you're the guy who you get the girlfriend on the side, and then you break up with your girlfriend. That's how you roll. Because that's not how Mario rolls. That's not how I roll.
Here's what I know. We're going into year 3 of Mario next year with a fan base that expects to win 10, 11 games, and a roster that's not built to do that yet. And I'm going to get into that in a second here because Steven alluded to that a minute ago when he was talking about how stacked the Miami roster is in his mind. Matt, you're in the process of going through these hit or miss series analysis of the recruiting classes that are making up this program right now. And it's not a pretty picture. And we also just got done ranking, we're like I said, we're ranking the players as well, doing the 30-1 countdown. And when we worked on that list, it was not a pretty picture at all either. Like, there's not elite talent in this program right now.
Well, hold on. Before you get on your high horse, there's not proven elite talent. Remember, Mario Cristobal has put 2 real recruiting classes together. That's where the elite talent is. It just hasn't had a chance to show up yet. So let's not jump the gun and be like, this team's terrible. The program is nothing. It's just unproven.
Didn't stop Ruben Bane from rising to the top very quick. Ruben Bane might end up being elite.
Ruben Bane is a superstar. Ruben Bane is like a future first-round draft pick. That's not to say that the rest of the guys on the roster aren't at least going to be like pretty freaking serviceable. You don't have to be a superstar in order to be a guy you can absolutely rely on as a starter.
Listen, I'm more grounded than most. Okay, like I like obviously what I saw.
Compliment yourself all the time, Gary.
I'm going to compliment myself because I'm listening.
This is Gary every day. He looks in the mirror. He's like that SNL kid. I'm good looking. I'm smart. I'm funny. I can do anything. That's Gary.
Listen, let's have real talk.
Grounded. I'm well-rounded.
Let's have real talk here for a minute. This is how I see it. I love Ruben Bane. I think he was phenomenal at certain stretches of the year. No question about it. I also think he hit a wall the last section of the season. I don't think he was as effective the last few games as he was in the early and middle part of the program, which is totally understandable. He's a true freshman who is playing his first year of college football. Yes, he has the body to do it, which gave him a little bit more of an advantage of the typical freshman, but they all almost always hit a wall in the middle to second, third of their freshman year because their bodies aren't built to withstand the pounding of the line of scrimmage in college football yet. Okay. So I'm not ready to proclaim Ruben as good as I thought he was at times. I'm not ready to sit here and say he's Warren Sapp. Okay. I'm not ready to say he's Daniel Stubbs, who put up 18 sacks. Okay. At Miami. Everybody forgets about Daniel Stubbs. I'm giving him a shout out because
Daniel Stubbs. He's at the top of
a lot of people do. I don't think he's in the Ring of Honor yet, Matt.
Oh, well, that's not. I
They
didn't
haven't
forget
put him in
about
the
him.
damn Ring of Honor. He had 18 sacks one year.
Yeah, that's not right. That's
It's
not
not
right.
right. It's criminal.
You know what else
But
isn't right? You know what else isn't right is you saying he hit a wall, but all it was other teams double and triple teaming the guy because they had no other defensive lineman who could do anything at that point.
Well,
They just
that
didn't
was
stop this
I
guy.
was going to get to that.
Yeah, right.
No, I agree with you on that. And that was part of it. I'm going to get to that because they don't have it next year either, Matt. But
They have Messidor and Kelly back.
Playing next to Ruben Bane on the defensive line.
The NC State guys, CJ Clark's really good, and they have Messidor and Bane. This is going to be one of the most effective defensive lines in the conference.
You're going to tell me CJ Clark coming in here from NC State is more impactful?
CJ Clark is very close to a free agent in the Matt Shodell free agency book. Yeah, he's
good.
He's about a 70% free agent.
But you still have Harrison Hunt, who's an okay player. But my point is, there's nobody that's scaring anybody there. Okay, nobody's scared to line up.
Messidor, when he's healthy, is as good as anyone in the conference. Nigel Kelly, coaches thought Nigel Kelly would lead the team in sacks last year. So,
exactly, that's part of my point. We were sitting here saying this about Nigel Kelly a year ago. He ended up going through the whole season doing absolutely nothing. Got hurt.
He was hurt in the third game.
But even before he got hurt, he was not.
He had a rough first couple of games. Yeah.
Oh my God! Listen, like we overvalue. We do this we've been doing this for 20 years. Okay.
No, you don't say we, say you. I overvalue. Continue.
You have a tendency to lean negative.
Yeah, that's not overvaluing. That's the opposite of overvaluing.
But my point is, this is not a built team, Matt. I mean, you're seeing it for yourself as we went through the exercise of ranking the top 30 players.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm disagreeing with you saying is there's no talent on the roster because it's just young, unproven. You're saying it's not elite talent. I'm disagreeing with that.
It's young. It's young.
Not the fact the roster's not built.
There is no guarantee it is going to win 10 or 11 games next year.
Correct, because the roster is totally unbalanced, which is why I argued against this whole. The way they built this roster is totally screwed up. It's not. Again, you knew it wasn't going to work the first couple of years, and they should have just said that's fine and rolled with it and had a bunch of true juniors next year that were guys who have now played for a couple of years. Instead, they just got a bunch of guys now who have no experience. We have no idea if they're good or not. We're hoping it's elite talent. We don't know because, like Gary said, maybe they're not elite talent. We don't know. They haven't played. But instead, they put these average.
We hope they are, but we don't know.
Instead, Marcus Ball's system, what he decided to do was put average portal guys on the team to take up reps that younger guys should have gotten experience doing and learned from those mistakes. And now we know what we have. And guess what? If those guys weren't good enough, he can jettison 10 of those guys now instead of having to wait and see if they can actually do anything when the roster's overburdened with young players now.
They're not doing that. They're not doing that. They're not doing that.
They're not because they have no idea if these guys can respond in games. The way players practice as second and third teamers versus the way they might play as starters, you can't tell. You can't tell in practices. Yeah, you can tell if they're really good or not. You can tell if they flash in practice or whatever. But remember, one out of every 4 or 5 practices are actually even hitting each other. And they don't want to wear each other down in the spring and fall. And redshirted guys aren't even really practicing sometimes. They're just in the weight room really during practices, a lot of it, and just doing walkthrough stuff. So, or on scout team. So again, we don't know. Mario doesn't know. He thinks he knows. He thinks the team's going to be great. And maybe people, buy into that. And certainly I'd like to. But again, I believe what I see. And what I haven't seen is all these young players play because they keep bringing in average portal guys to take up their reps from the last 2 years.
And they're not doing that this year. And
they're not. Finally, they listen to Matt Shodell.
Honestly, I'm sitting here saying they need 7 or 8 starters in the portal, but they're not doing it because they got to give these young guys that they've recruited a chance.
Yeah.
And that's what year 3 is going to. It looks like it's going to be about because there's not a lot of portal guys being signed. And we're not seeing a lot of portal action at all, really. I mean,
because he stacked the team with young guys that he doesn't know yet if they can play, basically. Right.
And they're gambling on being able to develop those guys for the 2024 season, which is year 3 of Mario, and it may or may not work. Mario can afford to take that gamble. He has an 8-year contract. He signed up for the long haul here. There never was a guarantee that this rebuild would be ready by year 3. People want it to be, but that guarantee was never in place. And right now, it is looking like they are going to bet on their ability to develop these young guys. But they also gave Lance Guidry a 3-year contract. It's because his defense is depleted of James Williams, Cam Kinchins, Leonard Taylor, and they have to try to replace those guys next year. And there are no guarantees, and they weren't leaving Lance Guidry hanging out to dry after the great year he had this year. They said, Lance, we know next year could be tough. We are committing to you for 3 years, which is a big step when you're talking about an assistant coach. Normally, most of the time they get 2-year 2-year deals. Giving him a third year at what I'm sure, is probably 7 figures at this point, was a big leap. So it's all going to be very interesting to watch play out. We don't have to figure it all out here on January the 8th, 2024. But this is all really intriguing. And, I figured, Matt, you'd be thrilled to death because in the transfer portal, they're not going crazy and they're not just grabbing guys.
I like that. I do like that.
They are very quietly fishing for, large game, very quietly behind the scenes, seeing if they can land some big time guys. If they can't get big time guys, they're not taking middle of the road players.
I'm all about that. That was my system.
I know you are. I know you are. They're finally taking.
Why did it take them 3 years to do the Matt Shodell system? I don't understand.
They are on the Matt Shodell system right now. There's no question about it. And it's why you see guys like, there's another thing they're doing, which I'm going to mention right now too. Like you see guys like Earl Little going to Florida State. Okay. And he might've gone to Florida State anyway. But the other thing that Mario, I think, is pretty adamant about is they're not letting this program be the place where you can just come back anytime you diss the Miami Hurricanes in recruiting and think of a year later, or a little, if it doesn't work out in Alabama, you're just going to come back to Miami because we're going to need you. Like it's not, we're seeing that with Earl Little. We're seeing that with Antoine Jackson right now, who has been begging to come back here on social media, doing everything he can do to try to manipulate Miami being interested in him. And they're yawning. You want to know why? Because he was committed to Miami and he decided to go to frickin' East Carolina to hang out with his girlfriend. Now,
if you think Mario's not taking players that can help the team win, you're out of your damn mind. He would, if they thought Antoine and Earl Jr. were that good, they'd be here. Believe me. Mario as well as I do.
Florida State's taking him. Florida State's taking him. Florida. Yeah. I don't know where Antoine Jackson's going to end up.
FSU's taking him because of Randy Shannon and the relationship that family has. It's almost like a favor to the family. I mean, Earl hasn't played. He's done nothing there, So,
but he didn't have an invite to come back to the U.
No,
whether he wanted to or not, I don't know. But he didn't have that invite. So these are all interesting subplots that are going on right now. We've got a lot of coverage of it on the website. You've got the hit or miss series. You've got breakdowns on all these quarterbacks, including Baby Tua. So if you haven't read all that by now, just catch up on all these subjects on the website and you will be brought up to date. All right. So I didn't want to end this though today without going back to Steven, who just spent a week up in San Antonio at the AllAmerican game.
Good job up there, Steven. Those were great stories.
Yeah, great job. Great job. Give us a little bit of a synopsis of what you saw up there.
Yeah, so I really kind of want to continue along this theme of, finding replacements for some of these guys who are departing from Miami, especially in the secondary, because my biggest takeaway from watching the All-American game was, man, there's like 2 or 3 guys who can absolutely have an immediate impact once they set foot in Miami. I think that Justin Scott and Zaquan Patterson specifically are both going to be difference makers in their freshman year. I felt like after getting a chance to watch them both pretty extensively, that I think both of them are absolutely going to have a chance to be very serious contributors as true freshmen. I think Justin Scott, I thought he was really outstanding throughout the week of practice. And my takeaway from being next to him and getting to watch him, really go up against a lot of these offensive linemen, keep in mind, All-American offensive linemen. These are 4- and 5-star guys he's going up against. These aren't just scrubs. I felt like he, for a lot of the time, really dominated at practice, and I thought it was one of the most consistent top performers at the All-American practices. I think that his body is in the right shape. I think that he is going to be in the right shape to go ahead and make a difference in year one. I think that's absolutely something he can do. And then Zaquan Patterson really, really, really impressed me, especially his coverage skills, because for a lot of the year, he has been way more comfortable as kind of a box safety as opposed to being put on an island in coverage. But whenever I saw him lined up at nickel and matched up with some of these speedy slot receivers, I never saw him out of position. I saw him giving himself a chance on basically every ball that was thrown. I saw him understanding his coverage assignments. I saw him understanding techniques. I saw him understanding the larger defensive scheme of what his team was trying to employ, which, keep in mind, wasn't overly complex or anything, since this was just an all-star game. And so all they really did was install some very basic base defenses for this week. But I saw Zaquan really check every box where I had question marks going into this week. I think right now he's about the number 8. I think he's the number 58 prospect in the On3 industry ranking right now. I think that feels about right to me. I think he's about a top 60 player in this class. He's a guy who I am really, really excited to see at Miami. And, especially with the departures in the secondary, I think that he is going to have an excellent chance to really be one of those early impact guys from day one. It would not surprise me in the least if he ends up being a starter this season. And then Marquise Lightfoot, he was kind of so-so the first 2 days at practice, had a really tremendous day 3 against Josiah Thompson, who is actually a 5-star offensive tackle who's committed to South Carolina. He looked great against him in the actual game itself on Saturday. I know a lot of you guys saw him, and I did a little grading the players thing. And I gave Marquise Lightfoot an A because he was absolutely everywhere. This was exactly the guy who we wanted to see. Right now, I think he's much more of a pure pass rusher than a guy who can put his hand down and be effective against both the run and the pass. I think he's a guy who I wouldn't mind seeing on the field in kind of some obvious passing downs, maybe in some different nickel and dime packages whenever you're getting out of your base defense and you're saying, hey, man, we want a guy who we can just put on the field and purely attack the passer with reckless abandonment, because he was absolutely working 4-star Georgia signee Nair Daniels, both at practice and in the game. And then he absolutely worked 5-star Josiah Thompson. I think that he is going to be a guy who will eventually be really, really good. Right now, kind of the outstanding question about him is his weight. He's only 215 pounds right now. I think he will be able to add weight. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he gets up to about the 240 range. And he said that's a big goal of his in his freshman year. He wants to stack on the pounds. That's something that he's been talking with the coaching staff about. And so he'll be a spring enrollee, and he wants to make sure that his body is ready to go by the time the fall rolls around, because he does want to see the playing field in some capacity as a freshman. He wants his name to start being thrown around college football as a freshman. And then real quick, just 2 more guys that I wanted to hit on. Derek Plaz, 3-star offensive lineman. He's only ranked in the top 600, but he's a guy who I definitely think could be kind of a diamond in the rough land for Miami. I think he could eventually turn into kind of an Inez Cooper type of dude. I really think that he can eventually be a very solid and very serviceable starter. I thought he looked very good going up against Justin Scott, who is without a doubt the best defensive lineman he has ever had to go up against in a game. He handled his own. He played with really good pad level. He withstood Justin Scott's straight bull rushes. He knew when he needed to pass things off to the center and when he needed to kind of lean on the offensive lineman next to him for help. I think that he's a guy who, once his body is able to really transform after his freshman year, I think he will end up being very good. But I do think he's going to need to get a redshirt year in this freshman year. And then last guy that I'm going to hit on here, because he was the last guy in the All-American Bowl, but Nye Carr, didn't really get a chance to see as much out of him as I was really hoping to. He kind of tweaked his hip a little bit earlier in the week, so we weren't able to see him get quite the number of reps in one-on-ones and during the actual practices as we were hoping to going into the week. But still, during the game, he was open like 4 or 5 separate times, where if the quarterback had just looked his way, he probably could have had 60, 70 yards receiving in that game. I still think that he is going to be a very good player, and he reminds me a lot of Jacoby George. I think he's going to play on the inside a lot. I think he's really going to make his living as a slot receiver. But I think that he can be a very, very good player for Miami.
All right. Before we go, Justin Scott, now that you've been able to watch him up close for an extended period of time, can he have a Ruben Bane-esque impact in year one at Miami?
Absolutely. I have zero doubt he is ready to see that playing field the moment he steps on campus. I think he's so special, in fact, that I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this. And if I'm completely wrong on this, we can come back here 1 year from now, 12 months later, and you can ring me out because I am saying this. I am doubling down on this because I've been saying this from the moment he committed. He is going to have an awesome chance to be one of the best true freshmen in the country. I think he can be a true freshman All-American at defensive tackle. I think that he absolutely can have a Ruben Bane-esque type impact for Miami as a true freshman. And I have zero doubt that even though he's going to miss the spring and he's going to actually be a summer enrollee, I have zero doubt that even once he gets here over the summer, he is going to be ready to go. I think he's that special. I think he is more than capable of being Miami's starter at defensive tackle on day one.
It's a pretty tough task, man. It's not easy to do. Did his body seem as Ruben ready to you as well?
Yes, absolutely. And that was kind of one of the first things that I looked at. He's listed at 6'4", 315, but we've learned very quickly not all body types are built the same. But he looks exactly like you want a college defensive tackle to look like right now. It definitely would be better if he was able to get here in the spring and he was able to kind of get a jump on that, or get a jump on transforming his body. But I do think that he's in good enough shape right now that he is capable of coming in and being a starter. And whenever you look at a 5-star prospect, one of the big things that separates 5-star prospects from 4-star prospects is typically with a 5-star prospect, you're thinking, okay, this is a guy who is ready to come in right now and start right away. That is what I think makes Justin Scott, I think he's the number 11 overall recruit in the On 300 and the number 2 defensive lineman in the country. I think that is what makes Justin Scott that 5-star caliber player. He's listed as a 5-star in 3 of the 4 major recruiting sites. I think ESPN is the only one who doesn't. Even they have him as a very high 4-star. But I think he checks every single box. And whenever you get a top 10 recruit, you're always thinking, yeah, he can come in and he can start right away. I do think that Justin Scott is exactly that type of player. I'll put it this way. I think he's the defensive version of Francis Mauigoa. The way that Francis was able to show up and start from day one and immediately make Miami better at offensive tackle, I think Justin Scott is going to immediately show up at Miami on day one and make Miami better at defensive tackle. I really think that he's that special. I'm incredibly high on him. This might be a little bit of a little bit of a bold prediction, but I'm going to stand by it. And if I'm totally wrong, if I am completely 100% on, you can bring me back here on January 7th, 2025, and you can ring me out and say, Steven did it. It wasn't me. It wasn't Matt. It was Steven, and you're fired.
Fired? Whoa.
We don't like to be wrong at CaneSport.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true.
Hey, how do I get one of those Mission Impossible things that plays a loop of me sitting here while Steven's talking so I can go do stuff? Do you know how I can get one of those? That's what I need.
You get plenty of talking time.
You're lucky that I'm flying back to Florida here in about 3 hours. Yeah, I'm coming for you, brother.
Yeah, you're not lacking in the talking time category. All right, well, that's going to do it for this morning for Good Morning CaneSport. We thank you so much for starting out your day with us. If you are on YouTube right now, hit your subscribe and like buttons. It helps us with the algorithms in growing our audience. And if you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please jump on board, become part of our community. Our message boards are hopping. Site's a lot of fun. Don't think you will be sorry. So get on over to CaneSport.com and become a member if you are not. So for Stephen Wagner and Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Furman. Thank you once again, everybody, and we will see you next time.